Good evening, and welcome to the 80 new chapter of Omega Sci-Fi Incorporated's Faith and Fatherhood discussion. My name is Antonio Caffey, and I currently serve as the Vice Bossilist of the chapter. On behalf of our Bossilist, Brother Matthew Coleman, and the brothers of the chapter, I would like to thank you this evening for joining us for what I think should be a great discussion this evening. As you are aware, Father's Day is this Sunday, and we wanted to take the opportunity to talk about faith, the role it plays in being a dad, and what fatherhood looks like in 2022. So we have a great panel assembled this evening, and I hope you enjoy the conversation. At this time, I'd like to introduce everyone. First, we have Brother Harold Rayford. Bishop Harold Rayford is the senior pastor of the Church of Christ of the Apostolic Faith in Columbus, Ohio. Prior to moving to Columbus, he and his lovely wife of 35 years, Jackie Rayford, lived in Sun Prairie, Wisconsin, where he pastored the Faith Place Church for 13 years. He was born and raised in Fort Worth, Texas, where he received his call into ministry under the leadership of the Honorable Bishop Richard E. Young Sr. Pastor Rayford is an accomplished musician, author, community leader, father, and teacher. We also have Brother David Mason, who is married to Dr. Patrice A. Mason, who he met in Charleston, South Carolina. Brother Mason is a graduate of the College of Charleston. He has over 37 years of military service and was recently and is currently promotable to Lieutenant Colonel. He's Lieutenant Colonel promotable and is the commander of the 147th RTI DSCC Columbus. Brother Mason currently works for Ohio Health, where he is the Director of Transformation Acceleration. We also will be joining us shortly with Sean Crawley, who matriculated through the Columbus Public School System and graduated from Lyndon McKinley High School. After high school, he enlisted in the United States Navy, where he served as a radio man and assistant chaplain on board the USS Abraham Lincoln. Upon being honorably discharged from the U.S. Navy, he continued his education, earning a Bachelor's of Arts in Pastoral Studies from Masters International School of Divinity. He continued his education by earning 2 master's degrees, a Master of Arts in Religious Education from International Seminary, Plymouth, Florida, and the second, a Master of Arts in Global Urban Leadership from Bake Graduate University. Brother Crawley recently finished his doctoral work in transformational leadership with an emphasis on diversity, equity, and inclusion at Bake Graduate University. He sits on the board of directors and trustees for 2 agencies, the Other Togetherness Organization and Mental Health America of Ohio. Brother Crawley was licensed on December 3rd, 1989 by Bishop Jerome H. Ross Sr. He was ordained by the Tridestone Missionary Baptist Church on August 2nd, 1998. Currently, he serves as adjunct general and bishop for 2 Reformations Perfecting Churches International, Bishop Greg Draper and Archbishop Jerome Washington. Brother Crawley is married to Francine Joy Crawley. And we have Brother Vincent Ford, who's originally from Garland, Texas. He comes from a large family. He has 3 brothers and 1 sister. Brother Ford has been married for 10 years to Nell Ford. He's also served in the ministry for over 10 years in between Texas, Phoenix, and currently Columbus, Ohio at the Church of Christ at Genesee Avenue. He's the founder of the Man Up and Educate Mentoring program that operates at Cassidy Elementary, and he's also a certified trauma-informed care trainer for the Care Coalition here in Columbus, Ohio. At this time, I'll turn it over to Brother Ford, who will be moderating tonight's discussion. Brother Ford.
Absolutely. Thank you, Brother Caffey. Awesome introductions. I am definitely humbled to be able to moderate this discussion. Looking forward to the feedback. I have my pen because I'm going to be taking some notes because you brothers have been in the fatherhood game a lot longer than I have. And so I'm here to learn as well. I want to start this conversation off with a question of mission, if you will. So I really want to know, and we can start with you, Brother Mason. What is your fatherhood style? And what would you say is your philosophy of fatherhood?
Thank you, Brother Ford. My fatherhood style is to be an example. We talk about, faith and fatherhood, and I think of the word faith. What is faith? That substance of things hoped for and evidence of things not seen. My children, my boys, I have two young men that are 29 and 25, and I had to be the example. I had to show them what I learned growing up under my father and my parents. How we respect women, how do we respect elders, how do we respect each other, and be that an example.
Absolutely, absolutely. I believe father's only as great as the example that he sets before his children. Brother Pastor, Brother Rayford, what would you say your fatherhood style is, and what is your fatherhood philosophy?
Um, I would say that my style would be a cross from Bill Cosby and James Evans.
All right.
Uh, from the Cosby Show. Let me clarify that.
Amen.
I think that I enjoyed and enjoy being a father. It was fun, and so I encourage men to be in the moment, right? I learned a lot from not only my father, but from his experience. So I'm the youngest of five, and my dad had never missed any of my events. My brother, who's 4 years older than I am, never remembered seeing our dad at anything. So by the time I came along, he'd figured it out. So I learned a lot, from him. And but most of all, I wanted my children to enjoy growing up and to have fun. So I would say my style of fatherhood was being firm, fair, and fun.
Oh, I like that. Firm, fair, and fun. I believe we can all learn from that. I have a follow up question for you too, Brother Rayford, because you serve at the helm, leading a congregation, and I know that takes a lot of time away from the family. How did you maintain, a sense of balance between pastoring the church and making sure that you're there for your children?
Well, it was a matter of priority for me. So I fortunately, I was not pastoring while I was raising children. I wasn't a senior pastor. I was an assistant pastor, an associate pastor, very involved, very engaged in ministry. I've always been a person that had a lot going on. So I managed it by, making sure that I knew what my priorities were. So if I couldn't make a game, I was at practice. If I couldn't be at practice, I tried to be there as best I could. However, I also wanted to make sure that my children recognized my values and my priorities. So I've known fathers who, they would, jeopardize their jobs or whatever, trying to be there. So I did the best that I could to maintain a balance because, I had to work. I had responsibilities at church. I was in school, at the time when my kids were growing up, I was taking classes, working alone, a lot of hours at work. So you just really have to balance and be there whenever you can. So I got less sleep than I probably could have gotten. I drove a few extra miles. I was late to some things, when I could, if I had to be somewhere, I had to leave early. I left early when I had to. I got there late, but I just, did my best to do everything. So I know that may not be a good answer, but that's what I did. I just did my best to be a good, a good husband, a good father, a good employee, a good youth pastor, a good associate pastor, a good musician, a good, recording artist, whatever it was that I was doing, I just managed it to try to do the best that I could.
Absolutely, and I believe there's a lesson there, and I want to get your input too, Brother Mason, because I know that again, when it comes to having a lot going on, right, serving in the ministry, serving your country, raising your children, and all of the hobbies that both of you men possess, I definitely want to hear that on your end too. So, Brother Mason, how have you been able to maintain that sense of balance as it pertains to still doing the things that you have to do and the things you enjoy, as well as providing for your family and being there for your children as well as your spouse?
Great question. And I want to kind of reiterate what Brother Rayford talked about. You have to put in that extra effort and make yourself extra available. I think about, you talked about hobbies. You can do those things, but when you're at home, make yourself available. Make yourself available for your children, make yourself available for your young men, your young women. When you're there, be available. And sometimes I think we struggle with uh, wanting to do too much and not have enough time. But even with that, what I think about is, as my father wasn't not home in the evenings. My father did not make the band practices. He did not make the sports events. However, when he was home, he was available, and that showed me a whole lot. He showed me great work ethics, and so I have to provide for the home, which demonstrates manhood. But when I'm home, I want to be available mentally, physically, and socially.
Let me jump in on that.
Go ahead.
If I can, because it's important for the dads that are watching to understand you're still dreaming. You still have goals, right? So, a lot of times you see guys and they're living their life through their children, right? So they don't have a life. But, as Brother Mason talked about, and I shared, and you too, Brother Vincent, you have responsibilities. So it is good for children to understand Dad's not here, but I know where he is. Dad's not here because he's at work. Dad's not here because he's in school. Dad's not here because he's in church, or he's at church. Dad's not here because he has other responsibilities. Now, I'm not hanging out with the fellas while my kid is doing something. I'm not playing dominoes, in the middle of, a recital. So I'm there, like Brother Mason mentioned, you're there, but you still, let your children see you graduate from college. If that's something you're pursuing, let them see you come home dirty from work, right? Because that will have a big impact on them. And they're proud that you're not there because they know where you are. You're still dreaming, you're still driving, you still have goals, you're still reaching, you're still trying to better yourself or create a better situation for your children.
Yes, sir.
Brother Rayford, I like what you said. And the other thing I want to chime in there on is when I'm not available, I will be at places where if I can, I will bring my children with me.
Yeah.
That's another point.
Now that's good, and I like that, and it's very important, I believe, for fathers to bring their children along with them when they can. I know that there are times where if I'm preaching somewhere across the country, or if I'm speaking somewhere, there are times where I do bring my children. And I bring my entire family, and the reason behind that is so that they can see their father in that element, and so that they can see, like, yeah, this is why I was down in the basement, on the computer until 2 a.m., or this is why I was, taking these meetings and things of that nature, so that they can see that. You said a word that I want to dig into, Brother Mason, and that was manhood, right? That word manhood, and I read a book about 3 years ago by Dr. Tony Evans called Kingdom Man. And in that book, he gives us 3 definitions. He talks about malehood, right? Some men are just known by, their biological makeup, right? That's malehood. And then there's boyhood, men that never grow up. and then there's manhood, right? And so I want to get you all's definition, and it's good to see you on, Dr. Crowley. And I'll start with Brother Mason in this instance. How would you define manhood?
I look at manhood as someone that takes ownership of their responsibilities. You know, it's one about being a man. I think any man could be a child bearer. I'm a man, or I'm going to put my chest out there. But it's about accountability and responsibility when I define manhood.
I like that. Brother Rayford, you want to chime in on that?
I love the word accountability, which is a cousin to responsibility. A man is someone that is responsible, that can take care of himself and his family. That's a definition for me. You can take care of yourself, and you take care of your family.
Absolutely, I like that.
Brother Rayford, I stepped back a moment in time in which, you know, growing when I first got married, I actually lost my job, and my wife was expecting, and you know, I came home and I actually cried on her. You know, I was thinking, I got a baby on the way, and my responsibilities, and what she shared with me is God will provide, and at that moment, it is, you know, you say a prayer, but you got action behind it. She said, let's pray about it, but put action behind it. And it was about, you know, I would go out and do anything in order to bring, you know, resources back to the home. And I wasn't about stepping too low to do that, or going below my means. It was never below my means. It was all about, what do I need to do to be responsible for my wife and child at the time. So
manhood.
You know, manhood.
Yeah. I like that. That brings me to another point. You all are bringing some good content here. You mentioned your wife, right? And the question that I have, I believe, is really important, and I believe that anybody watching this will find out the importance after I ask the question. But how important or how vital has it been to your success as a father by having a supportive wife? Because we know that, you know, God designed Eve to be that companion, that helper, if you will, right? And so what role has she played, and this is for everyone that is a part of this today, what role has she played in your success of being the father that you are today?
Who you going to?
You know, I was just going to lob that up in the air.
You can't lob that up, man. You got
Absolutely. I would call him Dr. Crowley, but you know, he's driving, and I really do not want to be the cause of that.
Right. Well, I'm taking. My wife and I have been married for 37 years. It'll be 37 years next month, July 5th. And for me, you know, if you unplug her from my life, you talk about a hot mess of a life, right? So I you know, other than the Lord Jesus Christ, there is Jackie, who has allowed me to dream. Now, the thing that I love about my wife is she is my wife, right? So when I come home, you know, people could talk about I'm the king of the castle and all this stuff. Hey, bruh, pick up your shoes. You know, you gonna leave that, you know, there, that kind of thing. You know, just my wife grounds me and has been the glue of my family, and so for that reason, you know, I value not only the wives, but I value the mothers, the single mothers, the parents who have, you know, complicated relationships that, you know, they're engaged in and trying to raise children, you know, in this challenging world. But the role of a woman, if we were to expand it, you know, in fatherhood, I think, you know, you can't, if you're going to raise children, if you're going to be engaged in the child's life, there has to be a strong relationship, a strong rapport and communication. Now I may be speaking as a pastor, between the mother of the child and the father of the child, right? Or the father figure, or the stepdad, or the whoever it is, because that mother really seals the deal of those values, of that example. If she builds dad up, if she builds him up in the eyes of those children, then when the children see you, you can generally tell how the mother feels about the father by how the children greet him. When I would come in the house, when my children were small, I mean real small, they would run, "Daddy, Daddy's home." Y'all remember that? Some of you remember that. I know, Brother Ford, you know, Daddy's home. The reason they were happy that Daddy's home is because of Mama. Not that she was so mean. They're like, "Oh, Dad, come rescue us." But I've been blessed with a very supportive wife and mother of my children. I can't say enough good things about her.
I love that. I love that. Brother Mason.
Brother Rayford, I commend you on almost 37 years, if not 37 years. As I don't know if it was brought up earlier, but my wife and I will hit 30 years in November of this year. And I will reiterate what you stated. She's the foundation, you know, and she's the challenger of the marriage. You know, I wouldn't be where I am today if she haven't challenged me and get me out of my status quo and push me, you know, and I appreciate that, because where we are today is not where we would have been if it wasn't for her, you know. And even in my military career, I just brought this up today, that she's the one that keeps me grounded. I would hit 37 years in July, and she continued to say, "Why, you know, why are you planning on retiring? What else are you going to do?" You know, so it is that strength and that push behind you. But as you also stated, you know, I look back at manhood. Manhood is evidence of how your wife is being treated. You know, so when I look at how I treat my wife and how my young men look at me as a father, I see that as being a man, being manly in that manhood. You know, don't be an example.
Absolutely. And that is the transcendence of fatherhood, which can lead us into this conversation of how faith and fatherhood work together. Brother Mason, you quoted Hebrews 11:1, right? We know that there are scriptures that say, there's a scripture that says, you know, faith come by hearing, hearing by the word of God, right? We know that we know that in the beginning was the word, and the word was with God, and the word was God, right? We hear all these things, we know all these things, and faith is so important to this journey of fatherhood, right? Brother Mason, you talked about losing your job, right, and having an expecting wife. Brother Rayford and you know, Brother Crowley, I know that you all have been through a number of things that have tested your faith, and so I'm gonna start with Brother Rayford in this question. But how has faith sustained you in your journey as a father? How has it kept you going? You know, when you wake up in the morning and it's just you're tired, but you got a lot to do, and it's a Saturday. You much rather sit home and watch football or do what you do, but you got stuff to do with the kids. You got stuff to do around the house, but your faith is being tested. How have you been able to maintain a high sense of joy even in the midst of those trials?
Absolutely. So faith sets the bar.
Mm.
Faith sets the bar. Faith sets the pace. It's not my peers. It's not my friends. It's not how I feel. So the scriptures teach us how to be a man. The scriptures tell us, you know, what to reach for, what that we must work, right? The scriptures teach us we must love. The scriptures tell us we must nurture. And by allowing the word of God to guide me, it has kept me on the straight and narrow. So when the stupid idea comes, it's my faith that points it out that that's stupid. Don't do that. Don't consider that. And subsequently, it has been the leading of the Lord that has kept me and allowed me to father, to be a father, to be a husband, to be a man, because when we are living according to the scriptures, we reach our peak as we endeavor to please God.
I like that. That was an outstanding answer. See the smiles across the screen, and some of the comments on YouTube are in agreement with that. But Brother Mason, how has faith sustained your journey as a father?
So, you know, I quoted Ephesians, but you know, Brother Rayford, I would say that I heard a sermon once that says, "For best results, follow the instructions," and the Bible, the scriptures are the instructions. All we have to do is follow it, right? And even faith, you know, the things hoped for, I don't have to see it to know it's going to occur. I just have to speak it and then know it's going to happen. And that's what faith is. So that, you know, as I look at, you know, being a father and using faith, as you mentioned, the bar is set. All I got to do is speak it and know it's going to happen. I don't have to see it. I just know it's going to occur. When I want my family to be well, I speak that to be well. When I want my boys, my young men, I'm keep saying boys because young men, I speak life into their existence. I speak wealth into their existence and know that it's going to occur because God has already spoken it. He's already said, you know, if we ask for it in His name, it'll be delivered and given to us. And so my faith is knowing that's going to occur.
That's good, because faith is a tenet of leadership, right? You know, when you're you know, life becomes a battle, and in those battles we have to be mindful of the fact that typically faith is what's going to sustain us when the things around us have fallen or have faltered. So, you know, a follow-up question to that would be, you know, specifically, or how have you been intentional? Brother Rayford, how have you been intentional about passing down these tenets of faith, these tenets of love and nurturing? How have you been intentional about passing those down to your children?
I think you practice what you preach. Right. It doesn't get any clearer than that. You know, it's like some parents are like, do as I say, not as I do. That is bad advice, right? Your children are not going to do as you say and not as you do. But if you live the life, if you live the light, you know, if your I was laughing because Brother Mason talks about his boys. How old are your boys again?
29 and 25.
yeah, the boys, right? There'll always be that. There's a saying that I heard that you aren't a man while your father's still alive, at least not to your father, right?
I like that.
And I can relate because my son is 30. He just turned 34. But when you live it, right? When you live it, you pass it down. Even if they don't follow that example, right? Even if they go a different way, you don't want your children to say, yeah, but you did it. You know, you don't want them to say, well, I don't want my children to say, well, my dad was this and my dad was that. And I'm just being like him, right? Of course, nobody is perfect, right? None of us are perfect. We all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. But again, it's back to that striving, right? That effort, that goal of being the best you can be, so that our children will strive, even if they aren't striving to be like God. They're striving to be a better man than we were. And I think that's how you set that example and you impart it by living what you say, what the word says live.
I like that. Brother Mason, anything to add?
Yeah, brother Rayford, I like that. What, as I appreciate the appreciate allowing me to say boys, and hopefully they're listening, and I'm not minimizing how grown they are. But I will also say that as I look at how I demonstrated faith, I think about what has occurred in my life over the last 30 years since my wife has been married, since we've been married, and since my oldest son and his age. We have relocated 4 times,
Wow.
and those 4 times have been from one extreme to the other. So you can imagine, both my boys grew up in Charleston, South Carolina, or was born in Charleston, South Carolina, but we left Charleston and moved to northern Minnesota, from one extreme to another. And I just throw this out there to be the only African American family. I said, hey, if they don't make it an issue, it won't be an issue. To demonstrate that, love is out there. You just take the chance, but you got faith that everything will be all right. And to leave Minnesota to Mississippi and in Ohio. So, to demonstrate that you can accept what's been given to you. But I like what you also said, that we can fall, we can fail, but it's how you get back up. I don't throw the Bible at my children or my family, but we live it. We talk about the scripture. We demonstrate what's in the scripture, but I don't have to push it on them to make them live a certain way. So therefore, I want to, as you mentioned, I want to live what I preach and not preach to live.
Absolutely, absolutely. Dr. Crowley,
Yeah.
you're stationary now, so I gotta throw this question out there for you, as far as just imparting faith. How have you been intentional about teaching the tenets of faith to your children?
The greatest example is to fatherhood is the way you do it by observation. So I had great role models, and a lot of our children don't have those role models. They are raised by the television, and other streams of media, such as our social media and TikTok and all that. So all I could do was be the best example to them, take them places. Sometimes with my wife, when I have my boys, we go to the movies and make it like a man night or something, and not go with my wife. It's just me and the boys. But support is a great thing too, because my kids were active in football and wrestling. So them looking up in the stands and seeing me there was a great asset as well. Hopefully that answered your question, Brother Ford.
No, absolutely. I'm glad that you're able to chime in. It's funny because, this idea of boys has been a joke, right? So my mom, and she's watching on YouTube. My mother's a captain in the U.S. Army. And it's funny because me and my brothers, people ask us where we graduated from. We tell them we graduated from the Homestead Military School. And they say, well, where's that at? I said, that's our house, 2106 Homestead Place, right? That's where we grew up. But my mother, she still says, y'all are my boys. Y'all are my boys. And my father, it's funny because even when my friends are around or things of that nature, I still say yes, sir, no, sir to my father.
Mm-hmm.
I still have a lot of respect for my father. He was very, very supportive of us growing up. He attended a number of football games and basketball games and track meets and took off work. And we spent a lot of time together as young men. And it really taught me the essence of hard work. Watching my father get up, go to work every day, even when he didn't feel like it. Watching my grandfather get up and go to work every day, even when he didn't feel like it. And watching my grandfather serve in their respective churches. This idea of fatherhood, to me, really exudes the power of servant leadership, right? Because especially when the Bible expresses this idea of of leading by example, and not only leading by example, but giving us the opportunity to love our wife as Christ loved the church. I want to dig into something else as well. Let's shift gears here. The men in your life, right? The fathers, albeit, or the uncles, or what type of things did they teach you all? Because you just don't get to this place of fatherhood and success as you men have by osmosis, right? Somebody's poured into you. So what did that pouring into look like, and how has it shifted the way that you father today?
Hey, let me jump in for a second.
Go ahead.
And I want to step back a moment, and I noticed that we're all saying boys, but I also noticed my son is on, and I want to say that he's raising a young girl, a 3-year-old. And I have been impressed with the example he's setting for his daughter, demonstrating to her the manhood of and how to treat young ladies already at a young age. So I know we're talking about boys, and most of us probably got boys, but I don't want to lose sight that we're also raising young women, and we have to demonstrate manhood with those young women. So I just want to call that out.
Yes,
But
sir.
But listen, Brother Mason, my philosophy as it pertains to the women, my wife and my daughter, is to spoil them. Spoil them. And I have, my daughter may be watching, but I have gotten rid of a couple of dudes in her life. After they met me, it was a wrap. Like, hey, you a daddy's girl. Yes, she is a daddy's girl. And if you're gonna be her, you're gonna be significant in her life, then she needs to be number one.
Absolutely.
And she's gonna be number one to me until she gets married. But I put my daughter on a pedestal. She is the little queen. She is, right under, and I tell men to do this, right? Because you don't want, this may be another subject, and I blame Brother Mason for this, but you never want your daughter or your niece, for that matter, to settle for anything less than manhood. Like, I want somebody like my dad. I want somebody like my grandfather. I want somebody like my uncle. I want, and girls watch how we interact with their mothers, with our sisters, with our mother, right? And so I appreciate you for bringing that up. That, because you don't raise a girl. I don't believe you raise your girls like you raise your boys. You give them, they get their self-esteem from us. They get their self-worth from us. They get so many things from a father. And so as men, we have to, in different ways, we have to be there for our daughters. We have to be a role model for our baby girls. I call my daughter baby girl. And I'm not even gonna tell her age, because she may get mad. Well, she's 31, and she's still baby girl, right? And so I think we should do that. We should cater to. We should love. We should baby. We should treat them like they should demand to be treated. I want you to treat me. They'll say this to guys. I want you to treat me like my daddy treats my mother, or like my uncle treats my aunt, right? And I think it's important that men do that for our girls. Don't, oh, that's a girl, just leave her alone. No, when you go to her school, you hug up on her, you stroke her hair, you tell her how pretty she is, how smart she is. You pour those things into your daughter, and nobody's gonna be able to get in her ear.
Absolutely. And I like that, because, what I always heard is a man will marry his mother, and a daughter will marry their father, right? Yeah. So you got to be the example. Otherwise, what you are, that's what your daughter's going to bring home.
Right.
I'm glad that you all brought this up because it's really important. I do not have daughters, but I do have nieces, and it's extremely important to make sure that we empower our young women, and we empower them to a place to where there is no settling. Right, and that's extremely important. But Dr. Crowley, you have something to add? Go ahead.
Yeah, but to answer your original question, my uncle raised me, Larry Price, who's a member of Mu Iota chapter here in Columbus, Ohio, for Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated. Shameless plug. But before him, I had a stepfather from the Bronx, New York, who was a two-time Golden Glove boxing champ, who when he was alcoholic and he was abusive. So Brother Mesa, he would slap me upside my head. Everything that he was, I am not. I'm the opposite. So it taught me how to know at age 12, if I had kids, on how to be a better father for my kids and not be abusive. So you are a product of your environment. I'm not saying because I grew up in the projects, I'm talking about home environment. Your parents are your example. So a daughter, of course, Bishop Rayford, is only going to look for a man who has the qualities of her father. He may not be a minister, but he may go to church and know Christ. You've instilled by your example, Bishop Rayford and Bishop Mason, and you now, Pastor Ford, in the church setting of how a man ought to carry himself within his own family.
Yeah, absolutely. I see the wheels turning. Go ahead.
All right. So we are doing this everywhere we go.
Yeah.
Because we live in a fatherless society.
Yeah.
Right. So now it's important for us as men to see ourselves as father figures.
Mm.
So when you are out and about, when you're at church, even if you're not a minister, even if you're not engaged in a church, but you're watching this, how you treat those women, those children, your stepchildren, right? Your girlfriend's children, right? Even though she may not be the one, how you interact can have a tremendous impact on a young person, and they can decide what I don't want to be. Brother Crowley decided what he doesn't want to, what he does not want to be. So my father, my daddy, his father was an abusive man.
Yeah.
He was a mean. Big Daddy was mean. Nobody cried at his funeral. If they did, it was tears of joy, like good riddance. The good riddance, deuces, right? I mean, just mean. My father was the opposite, right? My father was the opposite. And when my dad got old when he developed Alzheimer's, he began to lose his temper. And the doctor said to me, he's always had that temper. He just controlled it. And then I put the pieces together and discovered he decided he wasn't going to be Big Daddy. He was going to be a different man, which takes me back to your question, Brother Ford, of how people pour into us.
Yeah.
Now, herein is a challenge that we have as men today because we allowed people to pour into us. Right? Come here, boy. Carry that bucket. Go do this. Go do that. They were pouring. They were showing us what to do. So now we don't necessarily have access to kids like they had access to us unless they give us access. So if you're a coach, if you're a teacher, if you're a mentor, if you are part of Big Brothers and Big Sisters, if you volunteer at a school, if when you're out and about, you are pouring into a young person. The people, they're watching, they are watching, they're watching us. They're watching us, whether we're in a fraternity, whether we're at church, whether we're cheering at a football game, right? We're always being watched. They watch you get out your car and walk to, they watch to see if you're going to help your wife or with her groceries. They watch to see you carry the garbage pail to the street so that your wife doesn't have to. They watch you scrape the snow off the window as you leave so your wife doesn't have to. That's how you pour into children. And when you do it, again, being a little repetitive, now you can demand it of them. And you can say, hey, young man, help your mother. You see your mother carrying all these things and your hands are empty. You see your mother pumping this gas. Help your mother pump the gas, young man. They will allow you to pour into them if they see you living what you said. So as a young man, I watched and I learned because that's what we were told to do. And now we can't force ourselves on, but when a young person opens that door, oh, we got a story to tell.
You know, brother Rayford, I like that. I got a quick note that let me say this before I get back to my other point, that as men, we got to be careful that we're not caught up in what society looks like, that we got to make more money than the wife or our significant other. And we're you know, it's all about how much money I make. That doesn't make happiness. And I went through a marriage seminar once that talked about you don't get married for happiness, you know, so you get married for holiness, because you know there gonna be times where you're not happy.
Yeah, right. That's
right.
Right.
But you can always strive to be holy. But one of the things you brought up that I wanted to talk about, you're talking about setting an example. It's like my mom had 22 siblings. So there was 11 boys and 11 girls. And I would share that her side of the family was very close. So the men in that family was always trying to put something in you that was decent. Now, I can't say it was all perfect, but I never saw abusiveness. I never saw anger. I always saw, hey, young man, you go out here and make something of yourself. You make sure you get an education. You learn how to work. You know, you do that. But one of the things I wanted to bring up is we got to be careful about the gates. And the gates that I'm talking about is that eye gate, what we see, because it enters us, what we look at, right? We got to be careful about that ear gate, what we listen to and who we listen to. And then be careful about that mouth gate, what we say out of it. You know, so those gates will allow stuff to feed your men and your women, but it also feeds you. So we got to be careful what we're being fed in our eyes and our ears and what we speak. So I just want to bring that up.
No, that's really important. Number one, especially when we're dealing with our younger kids, because they are enamored with a number of things, whether the music that they're listening to, and it is a constant feeding, almost like meditation level. And it's in that, and if we're not careful and if we're not pouring into them, right, then that's what's going to pour into them. And so we have to be really, really, really strategic as fathers and as men in the community. I want to shift gears too here because, you know, all fathers aren't married, right? And there are some fathers out there that are co-parenting. You know, and so I'm going to ask Dr. Crowley this question first. But Dr. Crowley, what advice would you give a young man who might be co-parenting right now, may not be in the home full-time with his children or the young lady that he had a child with? What type of advice would you impart on them?
I feel, and it's like it's just my thinking, that the court systems, child support, and those other type systems have to be fair because you're putting a lot of strain on the fathers to pay child support and to be there, and the abuse for most of the fathers that are not in the home suffer a lot. The children suffer a lot because they don't have that father figure. Me, I have joint custody of my youngest son, and my ex-wife, she got remarried and I got remarried. But I spend as much quality time for him, being with him in my life, as the court orders allows me to. Now, the great thing about that is I can call my ex-wife and say, hey, man, I have Aaron for a couple of days, even if it's on her week, and she's never not allowed me to have him unless she was going on like family vacation and things of that nature, because I want to pour into him for these last 2 years of his high school experience. But yet and still, he's still active in sports, still active in baseball. I got a baseball star, y'all. And so I want to show up and be there, and to be there for him and not stop what I'm doing just because me and his mother hasn't worked out. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So I think it's very important, Pastor Ford, Brother Ford, that even though you as a parent who may not have worked it out, you can work it out for your own children.
absolutely. I like that. That's good. And I wanted to have an encouraging word there because it's evident, right? I mean, even in my role, in my role as a minister, you know, there are young men who are growing up without fathers.
Right.
And this is where the community has to rally around, right? And we have to be able to pour into the next generation. I know for me, right? A lot of people will ask, you know, is your father a preacher? No. Was your grandfather a preacher? No. Right? Nobody was preachers, right? But there were men who were preachers, who were elders and who were deacons and teachers that saw something in me that I didn't see in myself, right? And so having that, because my parents split when I was 12, right?
Right.
So for majority of that time, it was my mother. My father was still very involved. Don't get me wrong, very involved. But nonetheless, my mother was there majority of the time. So a lot of the conversations that we had as young men growing up, majority of those were with my mom. But my mother was also very humble enough to know that, hey, I can't give you everything that you need, right? So she put us around men that were upstanding, integral, right? Brother Garrett, who was my preacher when I was a kid, and I never forget, I was in the 3rd grade, and I had been baptized, and he made me sit on the front row every week. Front row every week. So if I was on the front row, guess what? I couldn't go to sleep.
Right.
I couldn't do a lot of things like other kids.
You were a
But
junior deacon.
Right. There you go. So he saw something in me that I did not see in myself at the time, but I'm thankful for it because it has put me in this position today to be able not only to encourage young men, but also young women as well. And so I asked that question because it's important that we encourage our young fathers and our older fathers who are trying to navigate fatherhood in a manner that's difficult. Brother Rayford,
yeah. I want to say,
go ahead.
I want to say to those men that are co-parenting or not able to spend every day with their children. Mm-hmm. I want you to understand that this is a marathon and not a sprint.
Right.
So you will be daddy for the rest of your life. And you've heard from us, you know, with 30-year-old children, 20-year-old children, how we see our children, but we are still needed. So while you are dealing with the 8-year-old, the 10-year-old, the 13-year-old, the 5-year-old, the 4-year-old, even though, you know, reconciliation is not an option, it is what it is. It's going to be what it's going to be. But as life goes on, your value will not be diminished. They will not need you less, even if there's new relationships or remarriages and all of those things. Just understand your children will always need you. They're going to need you later, right? So as a pastor, I have to deal with, you know, these situations where couples are divorcing or you have we call it, you know, baby mama drama or baby daddy drama, right? It's life. These are real challenges, and there are children sitting in the middle of this trying to figure out, trying to go through puberty, and his voice is getting a little bit deeper, or, she's going through, changes, and you're not there as a father every day to hold that hand. So when you have the opportunities, when she calls you and says, your child is acting up, when she gets mad at him and says, you're going to stay with your daddy, right? Now is your time to clear your slate and be there to the best of your ability. So my advice is, whenever life presents opportunities, and it will, because your ex, the mother of your children, she needs you to be a good father to your child or your children. She's gonna need you. So be patient, be understanding, and be present. If there's a theme from what we've been saying all night, it seems to me it is be present.
Yeah.
Do the best you can when you can. Because your children will always need you. And sometimes dads check out. I've seen men check out and they blame
the mother.
her.
Right.
But I wasn't a good dad because she wouldn't let me. She can't stop you. She may be able to stop you to a certain extent, but there's coming a day that she won't be able to stop you.
Yeah.
When that child hits 18 or that child goes through some challenges, the child and the mother are going to need you from time to time to step in and be a strong father figure. And don't be surprised if the other children in the house don't look up and say, oh, your daddy is good. And your child will be proud of you. You always want your child to be proud of you as a father. They know the truth.
I love that.
And let me say this, Bishop Rayford and Bishop and Dr. Mason.
The truth. So they know when you're right and they know when you're wrong.
Yes, sir.
So you don't have to put the mask on. Just be a good man, a good father to your children.
And let me say this, because our vice basilist, Antonio Caffey, is one of our moderators that's on, like moderator Brother Ford, is that you have organizations out there for you single mothers who may be watching by Facebook or YouTube, is that we have programs through our fraternity of Omega Psi Phi. We have the ambassadors, and then, Mu Iota has their manhood initiative as well. So, you cannot bow out and say that my son wasn't raised by a role model, when you have these avenues and other groups out there who can spend time to become a role model for your child or
yes,
a man. Am I right?
Yes, sir. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right, brother Mason. I know you had something you wanted to add as well.
Yeah, you know what? I'm pretty proud sitting on this panel, and then I'm looking at the comments being made, and then I see a comment from my son, because he's a single dad raising a daughter, as I mentioned. And one of the things that he said was, you got to provide patience, wisdom, and be present, regardless of the court system. And what I take from that is, quit making excuses. We're part of the Omega chapter, right? We know excuses are the tools of the incompetent, right?
Yes, sir.
We can make all the excuses in the world, but at the end of the day, it's still our responsibility.
Yeah.
We're still accountable. So quit making excuses and step up. That's all I can say, is step up and do what we need to do.
Yeah,
brother Mason has spoken, and we can move forward. But it is paramount, because there are so many things that are prevalent in our society today. You got blended families, right? You have single parents, you have all of these various things, and I think what the comment that your son left is right on time. Right, regardless of the makeup of your family, it's going to take patience. It's going to take wisdom. It's going to take presence, and it's going to take knowing that every day you're not going to be great at the things that God has called you to do. Right? You've been called to be these children's father. They didn't choose you. Right? God put you in their life. Right? And so when we take a good look at this, it's imperative that we know that every day isn't going to be a great day, but every day I can be better. And so I believe that is the very most important thing that we need in this moment. I do want to ask this question too, because I think that it's important that we discuss this to really just add some balance here, right? I really want to know this. What do you guys enjoy about being a father? Like what's fun about it? Because I know we talked about some heavy things, right? But I kind of want to lighten the mood a little bit. What do you enjoy about being a dad? Let's start with you, Brother Crowley.
Oh man, I'm glad you started with me because mine's real short and sweet. Like all of you are on the panel and raise kids, and my joy is the great accomplishments. And I'm not living vicariously through my kids. In other words, I played football, basketball, sports, and was good at it, but they far exceeded me. And for me to be there and watch them excel on the football field, in wrestling. Brother Cappy, he even goes to watch his daughter on swim meets, and you get to show off your kids, Bishop Rayford, on Facebook, and so everybody else can see. I'm not bragging and saying, "Hey, I'm the best father in the world," but I like those moments to broadcast on social media so my kids can always go back, because I don't take those pictures down, and they can see their accomplishments, and I'm proud of them even if they didn't do it. Me pushing them to excel in school. So I have one, my oldest is 22, he's in Germany, and God is covering him because they moved him to Poland because of the war, as you know. So I pray for him a lot. And then my middle one is 6'5" and 19, and a sophomore, about to be a junior at Otterbein. And he could have went to Oregon University. And then my baby's 15, and he excels in baseball, but they all got good grades. And I don't think that would have occurred if I wasn't in the house pushing them. And, for you single mothers out there, I commend you for being both mother and father, because that's what my mother was until my uncle came in my life at 12. So, but thank you for that question, Brother Ford.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Brother Mason, what do you enjoy? What do you enjoy most?
You guys are gonna make me a little sensitive here, emotional. What I enjoy most is seeing what has become of my young men. I won't call them boys anymore. What has become of them,
Right.
and I would almost say there are almost a young version of me, and therefore I set the right example. I think they're both being very successful in what they're choosing to do. They're both excited about what they do in their lives, and what I get the most emotional about is when they called me and said, "Dad, we're just checking on you.
Right.
We're checking on you," and I don't have to call and check on them. And then the other thing, what I enjoy the most is when they call and check on each other and have that relationship with each other. Therefore, I feel like I have set the right example. Now, I knew I wasn't perfect. I know they have gotten mad at me growing up, but now I see the fruits of my labor.
Hey, I'm sitting here laughing at Brother Mason because one minute he's talking about y'all need to step up. You need to step up. Now he's all emotional. He's all emotional. Like I don't know what. But you know what? Being a father makes you like that, right? Mm-hmm. You'll flip on the dime. So what I enjoy really the most is hearing from them you know, about what I did well and what I didn't do well. Learning, you know what, how that in one instance, you know, you didn't know that they knew, right? You thought, you didn't realize they were listening. You didn't realize they were watching. You know what I'm saying? And so now that they are talking, and like you said, Brother Mason, they're checking on us, and so now the dynamic of our relationship is shifting, right? Because you know,
Yeah.
my son rather has teenagers, so every now and then he'll call and ask for some advice. Every now and then our kids will call and ask for advice, but those times are few and far between. I'm giving less advice now. I'm doing more listening,
Yeah. Yeah.
and more relating, and trying to understand, you know, from their perspective, you know, like you can't advise your son on how to raise his daughter, you know, as a single dad, right?
Mhm.
Brother Mason, you can't, you can give him, you know, not from experience, right? You know, my by the time my daughter was my age, or her mother's age, she was a wife and a mother. So now we're having to pull from a different resource and having to learn, like, how can I be there for them? And I enjoy that. Like, I enjoy trying to understand what do they need from me right now, because they don't need a speech. They're gonna get one. But they don't need one. So I gotta listen in order to throw my little speech in there. Hope that helps.
Yeah, this has been awesome for me, and it's been awesome for me because number one, I mean, I've sat down with each and every one of you and had conversations before, but nonetheless, I feel like I've learned so much about you in such a short time. I mean, there's questions that I didn't even get to because time is just time, right?
Right.
But I do want to. I believe that we will entertain some questions if there are some in the chat. I did receive one question via text, and then that question was really building a relationship on both sides of the family. Because as a father, right, whether that's blended or not, right, you have your wife's family, you also have your family, and so my question to you, distinguished men, and I'm gonna start with Brother Mason. Um, you know, how should or how what advice would you give in navigating that? Navigating the relationships of either blended family or in-laws, things of that nature.
You know, I didn't look at my in-laws as in-laws. I looked at them as family. And I look at my brother-in-law and those as family. So I didn't experience this side of the family or that side of the family. It was all one family.
Mhm.
Even as we celebrated holidays, we chose a holiday in which we would go to my mother-in-law's house and we'd celebrate there, or we go to my mother's house and we invite my mother-in-law. So we try to do things together as a whole family and not as individual families.
I like that. I like that, Brother Crowley.
Um, I've experienced a blended family, and I was pretty lucky because when I married my wife, I married her two sons as a package, and I could not love her without loving them too as well, and grew to love them, and they end up becoming like my own, and they called me dad. Um, but I had the awesome task of raising a 5-year old and an 18-month-year old. And then we had our own child together. and raised them all the way up till they were teenagers before we got divorced. But just because the parents divorced don't mean you divorce the child, which sometimes we know that happened, Brother Wayford. So, but their side of the family, they love me just as much as my side of the family loved her as well. And that was the great thing. Yeah, that two families came together and universally loved the kids as well.
I love
We
it.
didn't have Brother Ford like, you ain't my real kid, so I don't care about you. I treated the boys, all the boys, on the same level, like they were my blood.
Yes, sir. Awesome.
So I like to encourage everyone to use what I call the 20-year mirror, the 20-year glasses, right? Look at your situation 20 years from now.
Mm.
And, because when you do that, it will change the moment, right? So 20 years from now, your in-laws, your new in-laws, by then you will be part of the family.
Yeah.
Right? You're part of the family. At some point, they are going to accept you. They're going to accept the love that you have for their granddaughter, their grandson, their daughter, right? You become part of the family. When there's a family crisis, you're present, you're there. And so your value to the family grows and you become part. Whether we realize it or not, we're part of someone's story. Brother Crowley, you are part of a whole lot of stories. And
Yeah.
people will reflect back on all I knew was him.
Right.
And, I was 18 months old. Like you was changing diapers.
Right.
Or teaching somebody how to,
ride a bicycle.
You ride a bicycle, right? You were there. And 20 years from now, they're going to be talking about you to their children, right? So for those men, I believe the question was for those that are in blended families. That whole blend it's going to go away.
Yeah.
It means more to you now than it will later. You won't even care that it's a blended. You gonna walk her down the aisle.
Yeah.
She gonna come to you and say, I want you to meet him.
Yeah.
Right? She's not gonna say, well, he wasn't really my dad. She's gonna say, that is my father. That's my father figure. That's my uncle. That was my neighbor. That was the one that cared. So again, there's the word again. Being present for the blended family, being present for the step family, being present for the play family, whatever it is, just be that man that casts a big old shadow that people point to later in life.
Yes.
When we were in trouble, he was there. When so-and-so died, he was there. When you hear about, and there may be someone you're not even in a relationship with, but you were in their life for 5 years, for 7 years, and you and her broke up, but you still feel something in your heart for that child, right? So when you hear of something that's going on in their life, and you, unless you're married, and if you are, you communicate this with your wife. That's the pastor speaking. You make sure she knows that she's all right with that, right? But when you can, you reach out to that child and make it clear. Listen, I care about him. I'm not trying to get back with you. I have no ulterior motives, but to help this boy, this young man, this young lady figure out how they can go through life because I love them. And don't be afraid, please tell young people you love them.
Yes, sir.
Tell them, I love you, son. I love you, daughter. I love you, nephew. I love you, niece. I love you, baby sis. I love you, little brother. Like, be men that tell them I love you. And when you tell, because they're not hearing it from nowhere else. They don't even make love songs anymore. They're not even talking about love no more, right?
You're right.
At least we could sing about it.
Right.
always and forever, something. But they don't even write love songs anymore. Come on, Pastor Ford. That'll preach, won't it?
Oh man, that
That's all
was
I got.
cool.
I'm done.
You know, and it's evident too. You know, when you look at this idea of a blended family, right? You know, you even think about a blender. When you put things in a blender, right, you put them in, they're separate, they have an identity, right? Your strawberries, your kale. But man, once you blend that stuff up, you can't separate it again.
Mm-hmm.
And I heard a preacher one time use an illustration where he had glued these two pieces of wood together. And they had been glued for the week. And during the sermon, he pulled the two pieces of wood apart, right? And when you pull that wood apart, what happens is there's pieces from each piece that will forever be on those other pieces.
Yep.
And so, like you said, that idea of observation, that idea of being present, it never goes away, right? Even though my mother never remarried, right? But there were men that were instrumental in our life. Right, that are still instrumental in our life, and I still know, and I'll see from time to time, just because, you know, around the city and things like that, and they're always asking about how we're doing or things of that nature.
They follow you on Facebook, don't they?
Yeah, there they go. Right, absolutely. Check on me and my brothers and things of that nature. And so it's always good. It's always good to do that. But Brother Mason, your wife asked a very, very awesome question. She says that our son Patrick, that you reference, is a divorced father, successfully raising his daughter full time, doing her hair and all. Shout out to Patrick. She asked, do you think your example as his father is a factor in this? I think people are trying to get you to cry tonight, Brother Mason.
They're working on it, Doc. Come on.
Hey, let me tell you a quick story about that. You know, he when he first got separated and had our granddaughter, my wife said, "Hey Patrick, I'm going to send somebody over there to help you with everything you need to do with Ava and her hair." Her name is Ava, and she was 2 years old. And she's got long, pretty hair. So that went on for about a month. I don't say if 2 months. Someone go there. Finally, he said, "Hey, stop. Put a stop to it. I don't want nobody else taking care of my daughter but me. That's my responsibility." And so he'll go to YouTube. And actually, guys, I would tell you, I can send you a video where on a Sunday night he does her hair. He plaited better than some of the hair salon folks. He takes care of her hair on Sunday, and it's good for the week. So I think that set an example of responsibility that I talked about earlier was an example for him. I have a responsibility to my daughter to take care of her, and that's my responsibility. So if he needs help, he asks for it, but he realized that I don't want anybody else taking care of my responsibility. So yes,
Can you do her hair?
Absolutely not.
But you create a notion of each generation is supposed to be better, right?
Right.
So in many ways, my son is a better man than I was.
Yes.
Right. In many ways, he raised the bar, right? And that's what we want. We want that manhood to be responsible for yourself and for your family. And it's not too late to start, right? So we may have brothers that are watching and they're saying, well, my child is already 25 and we are estranged, or, I wasn't there. It is never too late to pick up the phone and call and check on them and make sure that they know, that maybe you weren't the best, you weren't a role model that you're proud of. Maybe you wish things had been different, and you can have that conversation, and that conversation will be healing. It will be a source of healing to them so that they can figure out, their puzzle, right? Because you have a piece in their puzzle, not only in the past, but you are a piece to their future, the future of your children or the children that have been in your life. And I want to congratulate Brother Mason, on now I want to get my wife to send in a text message. Then what's the link again? I want her to Dr. Mason to come on. She making us more of our wives to send in a message. Let me send it in for her. But congratulations on your family. Congratulations, Dr. Crowley, on what you have done. Congratulations, Brother Ford, on being a father to your children, and to all of the men that are watching. It is more difficult, I believe, to be a father today than it was in the past.
Yeah,
right? It's more difficult because what children are dealing with, what girls are dealing with, what boys are dealing with, the pressures that they have are greater than they've ever been before. And I think being present today, all we had to do was go to football and baseball and band, but somebody's parenting a child that's not in an extracurricular activity.
Right.
So what do they, how am I there? Right. Or their child is in a different state, or it's complicated. So just do the best that you can. And then you can look back and say, while I may have some regrets, I did my best.
I love it. I love it. Yes, sir.
Hey, let me make one statement. I don't know how much time we have, but I want to commend this group here, because all of us, are in the ministry. However, what we have not threw at the crowd was a lot of scripture. There's been a lot of application of scripture. So I say that because sometimes you get caught up in people throwing a lot of scripture at you, telling you what you should and shouldn't do. But to me, it's all about application of the scriptures. And that's what we're talking about tonight.
Absolutely. And I think that's beautiful. We have one last question tonight from the audience. Tim asked this question to Dr. Crowley. How did you deal with the trying times with raising young men that were not biologically yours? And I have something to add to that too. But go ahead, Dr. Crowley.
I'm gonna be honest. I am a fun dad. So, and I get it from my mother. My mother's, and this may be the wrong example, but my mother was Bill Cosby in a dress. So she loved to joke and laugh, and it's just rubbed off. I carry that into my kids. They come downstairs, I crack on them, and it's like, did you use soap when you washed up today? I don't smell nothing that smell like skin, Go back up there, wash up again. And I think they were to the point that I would crack on them and their friends that come over. They'd be like, your dad is just crazy. He's funny, raising somebody else's child. I'm going to tell you a secret too that I did was, when I met my wife, she had 2 other baby daddies. So she had 2 other men that she did not marry, but were fathered to her children. So I got along great with them, and I would call them and reach out to them, and we had a relationship because I'm raising their sons. And as they became teenagers, well, actually preteens, about 11 and 12, and you know how cell phones rise. I got that plan for Verizon. I gave them cell phones so they can call their own father, their real father. And I didn't have to do that. But I wanted them to establish a relationship because when I was 12, I knew who my real father was and didn't have a relationship. So out of the experiences that I dealt with coming up, I said I was going to do the opposite. I was going to be there for my children. So that's to answer the question for Brother Tim, is that what drove me to be a great father today was to be the opposite of what I saw as as other men did. I said, no, that's no, I'm gonna be there in their life, and I'm still in their life, all my kids,
Absolutely.
or me and
That's awesome. That's awesome, man. And I believe that's where it starts. It's having the ability to push through. Because again, we talk about fatherhood, but fatherhood is a calling. God has called you to be the fathers and the dads in these young men and women's lives. I mean, when we respond to it as a calling, like Brother Mason alluded to earlier, that we aren't called to happiness, we're called to holiness. And that's a moral excellence that has a transcendent effect. And so that's what I wanted to leave you with on today. Those are some great questions. I've had a great time. I hope that you all have had a great time. I feel like I have learned so much about you men that has just inspired me to want to get to know you more. And
Ford,
go ahead.
You said you had a part 2 to that question.
No, I didn't have a part 2. I just said I had a little bit that I wanted to add to that as well.
Well, one of the great things is that we left out is love.
Yeah.
Love transcends everything, and love brings forth patience and kindness. And so love is everything. It breaks down walls, and it teaches you, love teaches you how to love something that may not have become a part of you, but now is a part of you because you joined to somebody else. So love is actually the key to everything that we've been talking about.
I like that. And speaking of love, and you talk about patience, I'm going to ask for some patience because we got a little audible here. We have another question. And I believe we got to take this question because Dr. Mason.
We have to take this one.
Question. But the question is, what does a man need from a woman, partner, or wife to support them in their journey toward manhood? This is an awesome question, and I'm gonna pass this to Brother Mason so he can answer it. Since
wait a minute, I think she threw that out there for the group to ask.
No.
Right, no.
Dad.
Well, I will say this. And it's interesting when we haven't brought up too many scriptures, but when you read the book of Ephesians, just like a regular letter, I'm not talking about splitting it up into chapters, right? But in chapter 4 of Ephesians, it talks about this idea of growing up in Christ, right? And I had a mentor that said one time that marriage is for grown folks, right? And so when you pass through, when you get to chapters 5 and later, you see that it talks about submission. It talks about surrendering. It talks about love. It talks about presenting your wife in a blameless way, right? And so this idea of what is needed, maturity, a sense of support, love, patience, being long suffering. Those are the tenets that I believe that are needed. And affirmation. People need to be affirmed, whether that is through actions or words, that we care, that there is love there, and that there is support there. But I'm gonna throw that to Brother Mason so he can answer the question accordingly.
All right.
Drum roll, please.
All right. Guys, what really came to mind, and I see that she asked it for the group, but something I share with some people in marriage counseling was this term I use, as is. She knew me long enough to knew what I was. So now she accepts me as I am and not try to change me. So what do I need from her? I just need her forgiveness, her guidance, her strength to continue to push me to be a better person than I was when she met me. So she to continue to love me with my faults. So again, we talked about we may not be happy all the time, but our good times have been better than our bad times, and continue to love me through everything unconditionally.
That's good. That's awesome. I love it.
Yeah.
I hope that your wife is pleased with that answer. You did good. I think you did real good. I think you did real good. I think it's also important to note that, you know, God has programmed the mother
Yeah.
and programmed the woman with all that we need. You know, Eve was a helpmeet to Adam. And you don't have to tell a woman or mother, you know, to love her children. The one scripture that stands out in my mind in terms of parenting advice in the New Testament was not to the mothers, it was to the fathers. He said to the fathers that we should not provoke our children to wrath, but nurture them and to bring them up in the fear and admonition of the Lord. So while I love that question, I think the bigger question is, what do our mothers and wives and the women in our lives, our children, what do they need from us? And it keeps coming back. They need us to be present.
Yeah.
And I think if we're present, that's my takeaway, Brother Ford. My takeaway, and when I do the next men's ministry discussion we have, my takeaway is what does it mean to be present today?
Yeah.
You know, what does it mean to be present today? So I hope, I'm picking on Brother Mason. I hope Brother Mason is no, I'm gonna leave him alone because he that's my friend and my brother. But I hope that we all take away from this conversation the importance of being present today and for the rest of our lives.
That's good. Amen. That's good. So again, we are out of time. If you appreciated the gems that have been dropped tonight, if you appreciated all of the things that have been said this evening, I'm going to ask that you share this. Share this with somebody because you have a myriad of experience. You have a myriad of situations, men who have been present, as Brother Rayford talked about. And so share this. The replay will be available. Share this with people. I just want to say thank you again to various committees and leadership for our chapter who put this together. Brother Caffey, your hard work does not go unnoticed. You put in a lot of work and you make sure that we do remain relevant, not only as a chapter, but as men. So I thank you for helping put these things together. And again, I just want to thank you, brothers, for taking time out of your Thursday. You got 30 minutes until Game 6 if you're going to be watching that this evening. So I didn't hold you too long. And so again, I look forward to doing this again. I look forward to having conversations. And I will say that I'm going to be reaching out and leaning on you, brothers, for advice when I need advice. Fatherly advice because I am raising a teenager right now. There are some challenges. I talk to my father. I talk to God on a consistent basis about making sure that I'm doing what needs to be done to not only be the example, but to be there for him. So with nothing else, I'm going to turn it back over to Brother Caffey. Again, brothers, I thank you so much for being a part of this conversation. We appreciate you. Great job.
Brothers, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Brother Ford, Brother Mason, Brother Crowley, Brother Rayford. You definitely imparted some great wisdom this evening. Thank you for joining us this evening. We hope that you've gained a little insight on fatherhood. Please make sure you're staying up to date with Ada New Chapter by visiting our website, 614qs.org, and also following us on Instagram and Facebook. Happy Juneteenth and happy Father's Day. Take care.